burnout actually look like out of the medical journals and research papers and into real everyday life? It's when you're tired all the time. You can't face the prospect of your normal day. You wake up in the morning with a feeling of dread. It doesn't lift. It's like this day after day, even after you might have taken a short time off. It's more likely when you're dealing with heavy workloads or difficult work environments. Important, I think, to note at this point is that it can involve and be a culmination of paid and unpaid work. So both in the workplace and at home if there is chronic unresolved stress. Hi there, lovelies. I'm Rhonda Chrimes. I'm a life and leadership coach supporting everyday people just like you to reflect and rework your everyday stories so you can step into the everyday leadership of your families and communities and create compelling, meaningful and fruitful lives every day. Today, let's talk about burnout. Not the thing you do in a car when the wheels spin and the smoke rises, but the overwhelming fatigue thing that happens when we keep caring and doing too much for too many for too long, where our empathy plummets and our sense of accomplishment is at an all-time low. The term burnout was first coined by Herbert Freudenberger in the mid-70s, and he defined it as a state of mental and physical exhaustion caused by one's professional life. Now, he developed this clinical concept through his work in free clinics and therapeutic communities treating substance abusers, and based upon his observations of the helping professionals who were in sacrifice for others. This sacrifice ultimately leading them to exhaustion, listlessness, and an inability to cope. Now, this term is no longer only applicable to helping professionals. It's pertinent to people from all walks of life and that live and work in chronic, high, unresolved stress situations. From overworked homemakers and employees through to career-driven professionals or celebrities. There's been much work on and around this topic, and by all accounts, it certainly does not appear to be too discriminating, and nor does there have to be a volatile outburst to signal its presence. In fact, most experts find it's usually much quieter. Kathy J. Kemper of the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center writes that while stress shows up as an over-engagement when emotions are overreactive and the demeanor is one of anxiety and hyperactivity, burnout, on the other hand, appears as disengagement when emotions are blunted and the demeanor is one of depression, detachment, helplessness, or hopelessness. There appears to be a general consensus that there are three components of burnout: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization or cynicism, and a lack of personal accomplishment or inefficacy. Let's have a quick look at these three components as they've been described in a research paper by Christina Maslach and Michael P. Lita. So, exhaustion. It's described as wearing out, loss of energy, depletion, debilitation, and fatigue. Cynicism. Originally called depersonalization because the first observations were of the human services occupations, but also described as negative or inappropriate attitudes towards clients, irritability, loss of idealism, and withdrawal. And thirdly, inefficacy, a sense of not being as effective as one could be. This was originally called reduced personal accomplishment. It's come to be described as reduced productivity or capability, low morale, and an inability to cope. Now, exhaustion and cynicism are noted as the primary indicators, and they tend to reinforce each other. And then when they present together, they can produce a sense of not being as effective as we could be. So what does burnout actually look like out of the medical journals and research papers and into real everyday life? It's when you're tired all the time. You can't face the prospect of your normal day. You wake up in the morning with a feeling of dread. It doesn't lift. It's like this day after day, even after you might have taken a short time off. It's more likely when you're dealing with heavy workloads or difficult work environments. Important, I think, to note at this point is that it can involve and be a culmination of paid and unpaid work. So both in the workplace and at home if there is chronic unresolved stress. You know, you might have begun as a person who really enjoyed working with the people at work and dealing with the customers, or perhaps even your family members. But now you notice you've become increasingly intolerant, even angry and irritable toward them. You are now there because on some level you have to be, but you don't want to be. There's an increasing sense of detachment from work or home, and you might be shocked by how cynical, pessimistic, or sarcastic you've become. And combined with all of that, you're losing confidence in your ability to do your job or be the person you want to be. You used to be good at it, and now you feel like you're working harder and harder, but seem to accomplish less and less. Now, if any of these descriptions have hit a note with you, take notice. While it may not be burnout yet, it could be the early signals that changes need to be made, especially if you're in a caregiving role, either at work or at home or both. Now, I am a proponent of prevention rather than cure. So I wanted to share what have been called the 5 stages of burnout. Because simply put, if you don't recognise it, you can't prevent it. I'm going to reference the Winona State University's adapted version of Vaninga and Spradley's 1981 model of the stages of job burnout. But please keep in mind, it doesn't only apply to a job. It can be parenting, taking care of elderly parents or people with disabilities. It can be magnified by living in a level of uncertainty and change that we have no control over. Just take a look back at last year. So the 5 stages of burnout are, number 1, the honeymoon phase. There is high job satisfaction, commitment, energy and creativity, as in any new job role or a new business venture or a new relationship, including parenthood. This is commonly where we're committed to the job at hand, and there can be a compulsion to prove ourselves. There is high productivity levels and job satisfaction. We readily accept responsibility. We have unbridled optimism and sustained energy levels. In this phase, you begin to experience predicted stress. And so it's important to implement positive coping strategies and practical steps to support your personal well-being alongside your job obligations. In theory, If you can create good coping strategies, this stage can be continued indefinitely. But in reality, few people do. Which brings us to stage 2, the balancing act. Now, as opposed to the unbridled optimism and positiveness of the honeymoon phase, you are now clearly aware some days are better than others. Your optimism is waning and you're noticing some common stress symptoms affecting you physically, mentally, or emotionally. There's an awareness of an increase in the following. There might be some anxiety and maybe heart palpitations, higher blood pressure and headaches. You might have started to grind your teeth at night. There's a bit of forgetfulness and fatigue, including deep muscle fatigue. You might avoid making decisions and lose stuff on your workspaces. There can be a general neglect of personal needs, maybe a lack of sleep or reduced sleep because you have difficulty shutting down. Irritability and lack of social interaction. Lower productivity and job, family or home dissatisfaction. And escapist or avoidance activities like eating, drinking, smoking and zoning out on screens emerge. Which then moves into stage 3, chronic symptoms. This third phase is marked by an intensification of some of the indicators in the balancing act. Typically, your stress levels going from motivation to experiencing stress on an incredibly frequent basis. Some of the indicators are chronic exhaustion, apathy, decreased sexual desire, a lack of hobbies, denial of problems at work or home, feeling panicked or threatened, pressured or out of control, missing work and home deadlines or targets, a persistent tiredness, repeated lateness for work or appointments, physical illness, and noting that stress is a major factor in many diseases. Anger, aggressive behaviour, resentfulness. There might be a social withdrawal from family or friends and some depression. And an uptake of the escapist or avoidance activities to take the edge off. More caffeine, more alcohol or drug consumption. Which then takes us into stage 4, which is the crisis. And the 4th stage is burnout itself, where the symptoms become critical. Continuing as normal is not possible, and it's become increasingly difficult to cope. Now, it's important to realise that we all have our unique thresholds and our levels of tolerance or resilience. But it's key that you seek intervention if you get to this stage. So the physical symptoms intensify or they increase in number. So chronic headaches, stomach or bowel issues, heart issues, obsessing about work frustrations or life problems. Pessimism and self-doubt dominate your thinking, leaving you feeling empty inside. You develop an escapist mentality. You want to drop out of society. You want to move away from work or friends and family. The stage 5 is enmeshment. And this 5th stage is where the symptoms of burnout, so from the crisis of stage 4, are so deeply embedded that they become habitual. You experience ongoing mental, physical, or emotional problems as opposed to occasionally experiencing stress or burnout. And this can include burnout syndrome, chronic mental fatigue, chronic physical fatigue, chronic sadness, depression. I want to say though that while burnout can and does impact life at home, at work, and in your life generally, it is possible to take action and move back towards stage 1, the honeymoon phase. It will take self-compassion. It will take proactively prioritizing self-care practices to raise your resilience threshold. It will take assistance from friends, family, co-workers, maybe even coaches or professional health and well-being providers. You know, I've been into burnout twice, and it scared the bejesus out of me. It was dark and lonely, and I didn't realize how easily I could slip back in. I lived my life as Superwoman for so many more years than I care to admit. I did it all for everyone else. I pushed my needs aside, thinking of them as inconsequential or unimportant or selfish. There was always someone who needed my time, my energy, and my assistance more than me. Until I had nothing to give to anyone. And I felt like the dried out husk of someone I couldn't even remember. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to go there either. So here are a few steps that you can take with me. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Rhonda Chrimes for my inspirational posts, and listen to my free Tuesday lives and Friday video blogs for tips, tools, and techniques where I regularly provide insight, resources, and training opportunities. Get in touch with me so we can talk about your unique indicators and put a plan in place to empower you to do things differently. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Let me support you to start making some changes. And thirdly, invest in yourself. Join my 12-week True North program to help you recalibrate and rediscover what your supported honeymoon phase can look like and can feel like. If you are in burnout or in the enmeshed phases, I really urge you to reach out to someone who can help you take the first step to getting the support you need and deserve. And do it now. So my loves, if your now is not the picture that you've painted for yourself and you'd like any help on this discovery path, or maybe something completely different that you intuitively know or feel isn't letting your true colours shine through, then please get in touch with me. You can do it really easily by leaving a comment, send me a private message, drop me an email, or pop over to my Calendly online diary using the link I've provided, and we can set up an obligation-free curiosity call and have a chat. See if we're a good fit for each other. Much love until next time.